invading, infiltrating Iran was the threat of nuclear wars. Now here's the big question. Did Iran actually have nuclear weapons? Are we getting into another endless, useless war?
Do we blame them for wanting to have nuclear weapons in order to defend themselves? Because, I mean, look at North Korea. Why has Iran for so long been chanting death to America? Even Charlie Kirk have brought this up, right? We're the ones that radicalize them. It's because of our meddling, because of our influence, because of what we did in Iraq for so long.
If you see America as your enemy, you want to take them out, a nuclear weapon, unfortunately, is probably one of the best ways to do so.
Just because the world looks like it's ending, it doesn't mean that it is. Jesus makes that super clear.
Share the good news of Jesus, which is that he loves you, he died for you, and he wants you to enjoy eternity with him, not separated from him. Hey guys, real quick, before we continue with this episode, first of all, we just want to say thank you for supporting us week after week.
And secondly, if you guys want to partner with us financially, you guys can do that through our Cash App. Our Cash Tag is A5 Podcast. If you look us up, it'll probably come up as Operation A5 Podcast. If you guys have noticed, our quality has changed. Our studios look different. It's because we're traveling. We're working with Deco Film. Shout out to David and Esther. They're our producers. But it takes money. It takes money to keep them around. It takes money to get bigger guests. It takes money to keep this thing rolling, and we've been doing this now for almost 3 years. God has blessed us. If you guys feel it in your heart to go ahead and partner with us financially, make sure you guys click the link in our bio for our Cash App.
Absolutely, and just know that your support and financial investment is making an eternal impact, not just an earthly one. Thank you. Let's get back to the show. We back?
Yes, all.
And we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the A5 Podcast. Man, we're going to talk about a relevant topic. A lot of people have been asking us for it. I've gotten a couple people. Shout out to my sister. She's like, "What's going on in Iran?" And I'm like, "You don't know?" And so I told her, "Don't worry, we're gonna do an episode on it soon. We'll send it your way." But that's what we're gonna talk about today, man. We're gonna talk about Iran, the situation happening in Iran. We're currently at war. I don't even know if to say with Iran, in Iran. I don't know what the technical term is, but definitely a lot of crazy stuff been happening over the last couple of weeks. I'll just say this much before we get started. Just for clarification, as a disclaimer, this is a rapidly evolving situation, right? Like there's new updates every day. So by the time this episode comes out, there might be a chance that the war's over, hopefully in Jesus' name.
Hopefully in Jesus' name.
Or the war is something new is happening. Drones might be attacking the U.S. already. I don't know what's going to happen, right? This is a rapidly evolving situation.
It's true.
And I say that because a couple of weeks ago when we did the Epstein Files episode, I was debating back and forth with some people in the comments, and I was talking about the economy and economic policies under Biden, and I was criticizing Biden's gas prices, and let's just say that comment did not age well.
No, it did not. I'm paying $4
I pay like
a gallon,
$50, $60 the other day.
What the hell's going on, Donald?
Yeah, definitely a lot of stuff happening right now.
It's my number one question right now.
It's affecting us over here financially, economically, because of the Strait of Hormuz and all of that. But before we get started, just wanted to provide some geopolitical historical context for the people that might be watching, and you're like, what the heck is happening in Iran?
Yeah.
Right? Iran, part of Persia, or formerly known as Persia, right? Persia's in the Bible, right? So if you look at it historically or biblically, right, you had great nations, great empires coming against Israel throughout biblical times. You had the Assyrians, you had the Neo-Babylonians, and eventually you have the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then they turn into the Roman Empire. There's been a lot of empires throughout history, but essentially Iran comes from that lineage, the Persian Empire. And so I don't want to get too deep into the 20th century history, but essentially I don't know if it's a theory or if it's a fact that the U.S. essentially put, who was it, the Shah, right, in Iran.
Well, so that's the thing, right? So they call it the 47-year wound, right?
Okay.
Which is that Iran was their politics. There was a lot of meddling from the UK and the US.
Okay.
So the UK and the US had a lot of influence on the Shah, which was, I guess, the monarchy.
Yeah.
Pre-1979, I believe. And then that's when the Islamic Revolution happened.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, which was, from what I know, his name was
Khomeini,
which is with an O.
Correct. And then
that was the first
died,
supreme leader. Then he died, and then Khamenei, which is the guy that we were dealing with now, that we just murked.
Correct.
Sorry, maybe that's the wrong term.
That the United States executed, took out. So essentially, 1979, the Iranian Revolution happens. The Islamic Republic, it becomes the Islamic Republic, right? It was a democracy before whether they voted for the Shah or not, I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know that much about Iranian politics, but I know it was a more westernized culture. There was, whether forced or not, the U.S. certainly had relations with Iran. And then anyway, 1979, all of that shifts after the Iranian Revolution. The Islamic Republic happens. The IGRC, I think that's when they start approximately.
Yes.
I believe around that time.
Because it's the IRGC and then there's the the Iranian army.
There you go.
They're two separate things.
So a lot of history that we're not necessarily PhDs on, but the government moves from a secular monarchy allied with the West. That's what the Shah wanted. He wanted to westernize Iran.
Correct.
And they moved to a theocracy, which is what was formerly known as the Islamic Republic of Iran, or currently known as the Islamic Republic of Iran. So we are going to talk about some of the arguments for and against what's happening in the war right now, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff happening, and a lot of people, including ourselves, have a lot of questions, right?
Correct.
Is this good for the United States? Should the United States even be involved? And so we're going to kind of like not necessarily tell you what the right opinion is, because to be honest, again, there are new developments every day. And so I personally, I'm like, every day I'm like, what's going on? I'm shifting back and forth. I'm like, we should
Every
be
day
there.
is something new.
Every day there's new developments, new information. And every day I'm like, we should be supporting this. We shouldn't be. What are we doing there? Why are we sending our troops there? Why are we sending our tax dollars over there? Like, I'm confused just as much. So, and the purpose of this episode is kind of to shed light on the historical background, the arguments for and against this war, and then most importantly, we'll conclude by saying, so with all this information, how should Christians respond and react? So let's start with, like, I guess the arguments for and against. I got some of these arguments from Van Jones, who's a CNN journalist. He was kind of giving out a layout of some of the arguments for and against this war. And the first argument for us invading, infiltrating Iran was the threat of nuclear wars. Now, nuclear weapons, right? The threat of nuclear weapons, that's something that's constantly mentioned. Now, here's the big question. Did Iran actually have nuclear weapons? That's what Trump and his administration keep saying, you know, the threat of nuclear wars. Nuclear war as a result of nuclear weapons. Correct. But the question is, does Iran actually have nuclear weapons? Because we've heard this narrative before. We heard it back with Iraq, with Saddam Hussein, and that led to a 20-year war that we just got out of, in 2021? 2022. Like billions of dollars lost, countless of lives lost. And so the question from both sides is, are we getting into another endless, useless war, right?
Because right now, currently, the last I heard was they expect this to continue until September. That's what, 4 months, right? Or not 4 months, more than 4 months.
Yeah.
But it could last until September. It could last another 4 years. It could, it could be over tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, we have no way of telling.
Yeah. Even with that, my question would be, why is it taking so long? And here's where I'm cynical or skeptical. Why would it take us so long if we supposedly have obliterated their Navy, their Air Force? Like, if we've obliterated everything, we
obliterated their nuclear weapons back in June.
Back in June of last year,
apparently there was satellite imagery provided. I'm assuming by the CIA or the FBI,
or Mossad or something.
Or Mossad, that the Israeli intelligence, that they started seeing satellite imagery that where the U.S. had already bombed and destroyed the nuclear sites. They were starting to build again. There was construction trucks. There was, they were drilling. They were digging. So obviously that raised some concerns.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about it earlier, and I know the I don't want to say the heart, but I guess the logic behind going after Iran is, we don't want to allow what happened with North Korea, right? North Korea went ahead and created nuclear weapons, and they're virtually untouchable right now, even from the U.S. Yes, we are the superpower. Some would argue that we're not anymore, or the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
But what happened with North Korea that's making them virtually untouchable is like we can't just go in there and pull a Maduro. We can't go in there and pull what the U.S. is planning on doing with Cuba, right? Like we can't just go in there and do a regime change like how we're doing now with Iran, right? Which apparently we're saying that this is not a regime change war. This was purely in the best interest of the nation for safety against nuclear war.
Yeah.
So I get the logic behind
Yeah.
it, but again, it's like, can we trust the things that we're being told? Can we trust the things that we're seeing? Can we even trust those satellite images?
Yeah.
You get me?
Yeah, we watched an episode from The Diary of a CEO, and Andrew Bustamante, a former CIA agent, he was saying that he was very skeptical, right? Because the question is, did they actually have nuclear weapons? This has been the push from the Trump administration that we had to go in there. They were a week away, a month away from like developing a nuclear weapon, so we had to get in there, and we're not sure if they actually had a nuclear weapon. But what Andrew Bustamante said was that they did violate the IAEA Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so there was a non-proliferation treaty where Iran was supposedly only allowed up to 20% uranium enrichment. That's like 20%, I think, is the limit for civilian use, like
energy and whatnot.
Correct.
Yeah.
Apparently, Iran was found violating that limit, that boundary, and was developing or enriching more uranium, which then becomes a concern because it's like, why are you going above that 20% limit of uranium enrichment?
Right.
Is it potentially you're trying to develop a nuclear weapon and you're not telling us? So that is a very real possibility.
Right.
And so that's, even though Andrew Bustamante was very skeptical of the whole war with Iran, he did point out, right, that like they did violate that treaty in the past.
Correct.
So have they lied about their intentions in the past? They have. So that's very real, right? If you think that there was any possibility for Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, you're falling on the Trump side, the Trump camp of like, we had to attack Iran.
Correct.
And why as well? Because Iran has been chanting death to America for years.
Right.
And one of the easiest ways to, if you see America as your enemy, you want to take them out, a nuclear weapon, unfortunately, is probably one of the best ways
and
to
now
do so.
The question lies in, why has Iran for so long? We discussed it just earlier, right? Like, why has Iran for so long been chanting death to America? Even Charlie Kirk had brought this up, right? Charlie Kirk himself said that it's like, we're the ones that radicalize them. It's because of our meddling, because of our influence, because of what we did in Iraq for so long, and because of the Diary of a CEO, they dive into the history of like the Shah, the IRGC, how they came about, and it was that again, the UK and the US had a lot of meddling in the politics of, and that's a fact, right? Like they started like in the 50s, I believe.
Post World War II.
Post World War II, yeah. We had a lot of meddling to do with the politics in Iran. And then that's where the supreme leader, he came up and he was like, hey, why are we like letting another foreign country, influence us so much? We are our own country. We're our own sovereign nation. Like, why do we need,
Yeah.
So that's where the death to America started, right? They've been chanting that for 47 years.
Yeah, and the Shah was very pro-Westernization.
Correct. He wasn't pro-America. It was pro-Westernization.
Westernization.
He didn't want Iran to be a bubble.
Correct.
He wanted Iran to,
Correct.
kind of have the influence that the U.S. has, that the UK has, that, all these Western European countries have, where it's like, it's more modern, more, more, how would you say it? I guess more accepting of new ideals. Whereas Iran currently right now, or most Middle Eastern countries are very, rigid in their thinking, rigid in their culture, So, do we have something to do with those death to America chants? I believe that we do. Yeah. I'm not saying that we shouldn't or should not have had, bombed their nuclear sites. I agree with, if you're violating a treaty and you're surpassing the 20% boundary, yes, that to me is a massive red flag. Now, right? And then here's the thing. Now you look at it on the other side. Do we blame them for wanting to have nuclear weapons, in order to defend themselves?
Yeah.
You get me? Because again, we're assuming that we're going to attack America.
But what if they were just trying to defend
themselves?
What
if they're just trying to defend themselves? Because, I mean, look at North Korea. Kim Jong-un could have launched, a rocket over here a long time ago. You get me? Obviously, Trump went over there, made buddy-buddy with him, whatever, yada, yada. And there's some sort of, agreement.
Yeah.
You could say, you get me? I believe Russia also has nuclear weapons, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's Russia,
North Korea.
Russia, North Korea, China,
The U.S.
I think the U.S., Israel. Pakistan actually has nuclear weapons.
Which Israel lied to JFK.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't know that. There you go. There might be some other countries. I'm not sure if the UK and France, I don't know if they have nuclear weapons. I'm not sure. I believe Saudi Arabia might have some. I'm not sure. I don't know if you could look up real quick what are countries that have nuclear weapons. But yeah, so obviously there was some, that was one of the arguments for this invasion and for killing Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. Another argument for this war was the freedom of the Iranian people. If you didn't know, about 30,000 people were killed, apparently, allegedly, at the beginning of the year. In January, allegedly, apparently, 30,000 civilians were killed during protests, right? So one of the questions that people have been throwing out there is Trump on a freedom tour, right? He got Venezuela. He's trying to free the Iranian people.
Infinity Stones, dude.
Iran, and then potentially maybe next Cuba. Cuba's definitely on the horizon. I think Cuba might actually be sooner than we think, and I think Cuba might happen a lot more smoothly, I think.
Well, he said it was a friendly takeover. That's what Trump said, right? He's hoping for a friendly takeover.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's another argument to free the people of Iran. Another argument for this war is to weaken China, right? A lot of people say that this is really all about China. China, I would argue...
because of the oil.
Correct. China, I would argue, is actually our biggest enemy,
That would be our biggest adversary.
Correct. Our biggest adversary, our biggest rival. And so what happens is when you take out Venezuela and Iran, you're cutting, I believe, it's got to be about 20 to 30% of China's oil supply.
Yeah.
And so part of taking over Venezuela and Iran was potentially to weaken China's, again, oil supply, which would weaken their economy, would weaken their global efforts, etc. That's another one. And then another argument is, again, to end Iran's terrorist regime of proxies. You know, they're
Hezbollah,
factually
ISIS,
known to, they're the biggest
Hamas.
state sponsor of terrorism in the world. They sponsor Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. And so, again, that's part of the argument too, just to end the Iran's proxies, and so to kind of bring more cohesion and peace to the Middle East. That is the argument from the for side, right? The pro-war side. We needed to attack Iran. We needed to take out the Ayatollah. So that is the side that says pro, right? Let's talk a little bit now against the arguments against, right? Some of these arguments, so the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, in 2025, they did a threat assessment, and they concluded that Iran was unlikely to pursue the development of nuclear weapons or nuclear enrichment.
It's a year ago.
A year ago, right? Supposedly, the ODNI, Office of the Director of the National Intelligence, they did a threat assessment, and supposedly Iran was unlikely to develop nuclear capabilities. Now, I did hear a counter argument to that point, which is we have had failed intelligence before in the past. Our intelligence failed in 9/11. Our intelligence failed in, I think it was around 1979 when they where the movie Argo is based out of, where they the Iranian hostage crisis, where they went into the CIA, the American embassy, and got a bunch of hostages for like a year or so. Our intelligence failed there. Our intelligence clearly failed during October 6th, 7th, when Hamas just came into Israel. So
does our intelligence only fail when it comes to the Middle East?
Not sure. Great question. Again,
It's a genuine question.
I agree.
That's a pattern. I would question that pattern.
Fair enough, right? Is there another interest involved, another party involved, perhaps
someone who would benefit from us bombing the Middle East?
I don't know. I don't know.
Or bombing Iran.
You're gonna say anything, David? Go ahead. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of questions with regards to Israel's involvement. Yeah. There's the question of whether the U.S. succumb to Israeli pressure to do this?
Remember the clip I told you? Well, the clip I showed you today of Tulsi Gabbard. She was in a congressional hearing, and they flat out asked her, "Are the goals
of the
U.S.
and
and Israel aligned in this war? Yes or no?" And she took the longest pause,
time to answer.
and she answered, I think, logically. She was like, I'm pausing because I want to make sure that what I share in an open consensus or an open room discussion, you know, is it the same that I would share in a closed room discussion? And they asked her again, are the goals of the U.S. and Israel aligned in this war? And she said that the goals that the president has set out do not align with the goals of Israel.
So
that to me is like, man, that's a
we have to
big
take that
one.
into account for
and
sure.
And the thing is, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe we, I'll look this up, or I don't know if you've heard differently, but to my understanding, a lot of the intelligence that we're getting is from Israel. They're the ones feeding us this. Absolutely. They're the ones feeding us the from the IDF, the Mossad, whatever. Like, they're the ones feeding us all this information.
What's up, guys? It's Alessandro and Rene from the A5 podcast. First of all, thank you so much for tuning in week after week. Your support means the world to us. And so if you've noticed, our quality's gone up. We're trying to produce the best content just for you guys.
And with that, we have different sponsorship opportunities available. If you guys are interested in that, you guys can email us at operationA5info@gmail.com, and we'll send you some details, and you would become a partner with us in producing this content. Thank you guys so much. We hope to hear from you soon.
Everything has been a joint operation, right, between Israel and the U.S. So that's definitely a valid point. Another argument against this whole war is the question of, did we not already supposedly destroy their nuclear capabilities in 2025? I know there's like supposedly the satellite images that perhaps they were rebuilding, but literally in June 2025, the U.S. military, in coordination with Israel, they launched significant strikes against Iranian nuclear and military sites, including Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Operation Midnight Hammer in June 2025, they used B-2 bombers to cause severe damage. So Fordow uranium enrichment plant, Natanz nuclear facility, and Isfahan nuclear technology center. That's what we used the bunker buster bombs last year. And so I thought we destroyed all their nuclear capabilities. But then again, the threat of nuclear energy is here again.
I don't know how fast you can recreate
I have
all that
no
stuff
idea.
again. I don't know.
So this is above our pay grade. We are not saying... I honestly don't know. Like, I don't, every day I feel like I get one side and the other and good arguments on both sides, and like information one day about this, information about something else the next day. So we're just providing you with information and shedding light on the questions that we're hearing. Another argument against the war is that if this was truly about oil and just like getting Iranian oil, that there were other options. We didn't need to mess with Iran. We could have gone for Saudi oil, which I actually do think we already partner with.
I think we already partnered with them.
UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. So there were other oil options, and I would argue, well, now with Venezuela, we could get that oil. I've heard that the oil in Venezuela is not as refined, but that's why we're opening up refineries here in America to be able to refine that oil, etc. So hopefully, $1.
But that goes back to China, right? Like the reason why we're going after the oil is because China was getting, I think, was the 90% of the oil from Venezuela was being bought from China.
Interesting.
They were the number one buyer. The number one buyer.
Interesting.
So then you mess with their oil there. Now you're messing with the oil in
Iran. So yeah, there's a big possibility that this is all about China. But then the question is, another argument against is that this might be setting a bad precedent for other countries to just go in and take over sovereign countries. For example, my biggest question would be, is the takeover of Iran scaring China from invading Taiwan, or is it enabling
them
and motivating them to do so?
And the issue with Taiwan is they don't even have to, honestly, in the Diary of a CEO, I think his name is Benjamin Rad or something like that. I think he's the one that spoke on and said that China doesn't have to even take over Taiwan. They could just block Taiwan.
Yeah, literally.
They could just Taiwan is like this big compared to China. Like they're tiny.
Yeah.
So all China has to do is just surround them, and no one can get in or out.
Yeah, bro. And
I think we get over 90% of our microchips that go into
semiconductors.
All of this, your phone, your laptop, your cars, your smart TVs, everything.
Yep.
We get it from Taiwan. So if China blocks Taiwan, that's a full-out world war for sure.
Probably.
Then we would have to attack.
Yeah, the U.S.
They would force our hand, and we are an ally to Taiwan because of obviously what they offer us.
And supposedly, again, has the United States involvement with Venezuela, Iran, like, has that scared China at all, or is it motivating them? And if it is motivating them to make a move on Taiwan, I think this is actually the worst time for the U.S. because now our interests are completely divided. We got Venezuela, we got Iran,
we got Cuba,
potentially Cuba. It's like at some point you can't, it's like, you
can't be everywhere, yeah.
And I don't know why we don't produce our own semiconductors and our own chips and stuff.
So there's an argument for that, right? Like, why don't we do it ourselves, and why don't we move the companies that produce them in Taiwan to the U.S.? And the thing is, it will cost a lot of money, and it would also take years to get to the mass production that Taiwan is.
I get it. Outsourcing,
so it would take us too long.
Yeah, outsourcing is definitely cheaper. I understand that aspect of it, even though there's moral, ethical things with that, child labor laws and things of that nature, child exploitation. Because I'm sure they don't have the same labor laws that we do in the United States.
1,000%.
So, I mean,
we separate the art from the artist.
Yeah, actually, Vivek Ramaswamy was really big on that, like economic independence from Taiwan and China, right? Like, and that was something that I loved. Yeah.
Correct. Which I guess you could say that Trump tried that with the tariffs, right, against like China and whatnot, and
Yeah. Well, let's continue. Another argument against this war is this week and made news. A top lieutenant for the director of the National Intelligence. Joe Kent. He resigned on Tuesday morning over the war in Iran. He said that it is clear that Iran posed no threat to the U.S. and the war in Iran was started due to pressure from Israel. So he resigned. That's been causing a lot of commotion in the news. So he's another one that's like, we should have never messed in here. This was Israel pushing and forcing our hand. Again, but this is why, like, I don't know what to believe anymore. Because one day this guy is resigning. I'm thinking, wow, he was under Tulsi Gabbard, he was under the DNI, and then now there's reports coming out that he's under FBI investigation for leaking classified information. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So is he a reliable source? Is he not? Does he have an ulterior motive? Does he not? There's so much going on.
For Iran? Is he
not? My goodness, there's so much happening.
Same thing with like Tucker Carlson. Apparently, he was talking to Iran.
Correct. Yep. Then there's arguments like, again, did Israel force the U.S. into this war? We don't know. There's arguments for and against. Other questions have been, was Iran already walking towards peace? Supposedly, I heard that apparently the day before the strikes, before killing Khamenei, the supreme leader, apparently an Iran diplomat was in the U.S. Not sure if that's true. I heard the same thing. Yeah. I heard that. So was Iran actually walking towards peace? But then again, I don't know what to believe, because with Iran, they're saying they want peace. But then you signed a treaty that said you weren't going to go above the 20% enrichment limit, and you did. What are you building with that much uranium enrichment? So I'm not sure. And then you keep chanting that death to America. It's kind of tough to do peace deals with somebody who's talking about death to you and your family. Again, like you said, has the U.S. meddled with them for years? Yeah. But it's like at some point we got to stop looking at the past and be like, okay, how do we focus on peace? How do we get past this? How do we focus on peace and for the future and prosperity of both our nations?
Right.
And then here's one thing I did want to point out and talk about is I do believe there's a bit of a double standard now in society that I'm seeing right now. Mm-hmm. We've talked about wanting to do an Israel-Palestine series because the issue, the topic, the debate is so vast. It's so complex. There's so many layers to it.
Especially when you add, religion and Christianity.
Absolutely. And there's so much that goes into that. And I honestly don't feel like we've thought like, man, I don't want to do that. I want to do that conversation justice. So we want to do a series, maybe have some more educated people on the subject matter on the show, and they can educate us on both sides, Israel and Palestine. Maybe we could moderate a debate. I don't know. But one thing I have seen, and again, I do think that there's been a lot of death caused by Israel in the Gaza Strip. And so obviously I I get the cries for free Palestine. I do think that there is a lot of deaths in Palestine caused by Hamas. Yeah. That's not to say that Israel hasn't caused any. There's been a lot of casualties, a lot of intentional deaths from Israel. So again, I don't want to get too deep into it because I recognize my limits and I don't want to sound ignorant on the issue. And I know it's an issue that's still happening. Mm-hmm. But I do want to point out what I feel like is a double standard because the world was chanting free Palestine. And if you believe in that, good for you. Like, you have a rightful cause to chant and protest and go do your thing. Mm-hmm. But there's no free Iran chants. Like, and I looked up these numbers, which I thought were really interesting. And if anybody on the free Palestine side is willing to educate me on this and send me your thoughts and opinions, please do so, right? I'm just asking questions. In the last 90 days, we saw approximately 36,500 deaths in Iran versus 75,000 deaths in 2 years between Israel and Gaza. So in 3 months, we've seen nearly 50% of the deaths that we've seen in the Gaza Strip, mm-hmm. right? So the free Palestine chants, I believe they're justified. Yeah. And why aren't we seeing the same amount of international outcry for mm-hmm. Iran and its people, the protesters that have been killed innocently by its government? So there's this conversation about the government killing its own people, its citizens for protesting versus Israel killing civilians in Gaza as a result of war. Again, just asking questions that I don't think today is the best day to get into, but we'd love to dive deeper into that topic on another day. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think one of the other things that have been brought up is the decapitation strike debate, right? Like, it's kind of like it's the Hydra theory, where you chop off one head and two take its place. Mm-hmm. And that's been happening in the Middle East for a long time, right? Because we got rid of Osama bin Laden, then we got rid of Saddam Hussein. You know, we went after Al-Qaeda. We went after Saddam Hussein and his regime and all that. But then you get ISIS. Then you get Hamas. Then you get Hezbollah. Then you get, what you said, the Houthis. Mm-hmm. You get all these proxies, all these different, bands of Islamic radicals that are violent groups, right? And they are, chanting death to America. Then you have sleeper cells in the U.S., right? That's another thing. Mm-hmm. If we went in there and we, kind of decapitated the snake, and now two more take its place, not only have you now pissed off the people in Iran, but now the sleeper cells that are in here, and on U.S. soil, they get activated. Yeah. And now we've seen throughout the last few weeks, that a few, Muslim, individuals in the U.S. have tried to, do like violent acts in New York. I think it was Michigan was the other one. And thankfully they've been stopped. Mm-hmm. Thankfully not, if I'm not mistaken, many to zero deaths have been reported. But still, like, you can see that they're starting to get flustered. Yeah. Which that was Andrew Bustamante's other argument, is like, this is the other precedent. It's like, now you go in there, you do what you want to do, you bomb them, you do whatever you want. But then now we have just pissed off. We kicked the hornet's nest, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're kind of seeing that. The Supreme Leader got killed, then his son took over, and then they have not only the Supreme Leader, they have a president, but then they have also a director of their affairs. There's so many people in this regime. So again, I don't know how deep we are into it as far as like how many people we've taken out. And like you said, is it like, once we take everybody out, it's over?
Trump said that apparently we've taken out most of their leaders.
I don't know what to believe anymore. I mean, I thought we destroyed the nuclear capabilities last year, but apparently we're back here. So I have no idea. Right. There's some people throwing out questions and theories more than anything as to why now. Right. Why did we have to strike Iran now? A really interesting theory, going back to an episode that we did a couple weeks ago, is the Epstein Files. The Epstein Files was a distraction. The Epstein Files was hot on the press. A bunch of names get leaked. There was a court case with the Clintons and everything. Mm-hmm.
Prince Andrew gets arrested.
Like, there was so much stuff happening with the Epstein Files, and then suddenly, no more Epstein Files, right? Because the world is on.
Well, we haven't forgotten, right? No one has.
Correct. But at least the media, very quiet on Epstein Files. Right. They've all turned their attention to Iran. So this is a distraction from the Epstein Files. Another theory that I thought was fun, just to throw it out there. I don't agree with this. I hope it doesn't happen because, again, it would go against well, actually, I don't forgive my ignorance, but there's only been one president that served 3 terms. I believe that was FDR during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a theory that Trump might be trying to enforce his third term by way of war, saying like if we're in war, there can't be any elections and whatnot. So that's an interesting theory for sure. But to wrap up this episode, I know we've thrown out a lot of information. We always want to point it back to the Word. We always want to point it back to the Lord. And so what is our response as Christians? There's so much information out there. Should we be involved with Iran? Should we not? Are you pro-Israel, pro-Palestine? Should we be involved in the Middle East? Should we not? There's so much information. So as Christians, how do we respond? And so I think the first thing that we ought to do as Christians, sounds cliche, but prayer should be our first resort, not our last resort. We shouldn't go to God when things go wrong. We should go to God every morning during the day. The Bible says, Paul says, pray without ceasing. And so it also says in everything, give thanks. And so I think our first resort should be prayer. And it's funny, I'll give an actual testimony because with this whole Iran thing, a couple of days ago, I was like just looking at the news and everything. And bro, I read that, there's a term for, is it conscriptment? You know what that is? Conscriptment?
That's above my IQ grade.
Oh, conscription. My bad.
There you go.
Conscription, I think it is. Fancy term. Yeah. Conscription is the mandatory enrollment of individuals, typically young men aged 18 to 30 or higher, into national armed forces. There was a theory about that supposedly Trump might invoke conscription if this thing gets...
Yeah, I think you actually sign up for that like in high school.
Yeah, right, to get student loans.
It's kind of like mandatory or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, when I saw that news headline pop up, I promise you, bro, I felt a chill down my spine, like a sense of fear that I hadn't felt in a long time. And I had to catch myself and rebuke it and pray against it, right? Like my faith, my hope is not in Trump, is not in the government. My faith and hope is in Jesus. He's the Lord and Savior of my life. Ultimately, he determines and ordains my steps. He knows my last breath. And so I had to command my soul, hey, let's worship, let's praise right now, even though we feel this fear. And I hadn't felt that in a while. And so this was a moment for me. You know, we hear about these sleeper cells too, like, oh, when's the next attack coming? Because there's a bunch of sleeper cells. There's now this stuff about supposedly that drones were going to attack LA. And now there's supposedly some drones that have been seen over military bases. World War III, military draft. There's so many things that can cause fear.
Right.
And so I think as Christians, our first response is prayer. We need to be praying all the time. I don't know if you wanted anything to that.
Yeah, 2 things, right? So 2 verses from Isaiah. The first one, I think it's in chapter 26, I think, where it says that he will keep in perfect peace those who fix their thoughts on him. So to your point, prayer, right? When you pray, your number one thought is you're fixing it on Jesus, right? So he keeps us in perfect peace. And man, we can't live with fear of tomorrow, right? Jesus also says that tomorrow has its own worries, has its own troubles. Focus on today. Take it one day at a time. And yes, we live in a scary time right now. It's definitely a scary time to be in with wars and whatnot. But one thing I also wanted to touch on was Jesus said it, right? Like just like when you know that a fig tree is starting to blossom, that's when you know those are the signs of the end times, right? Yeah. So, and Jesus also said that there will be wars and rumors of war and all these things. Those are just the beginning birth pains. It could still be thousands of years until Jesus comes back. So we're literally scratching the surface, if that, with end time. So whenever you see all these crazy end time prophecies and all these crazy end time videos, please filter it through the Holy Spirit, filter it through prayer. Don't freak yourself out, because I promise you that this is just starting. And another verse I wanted to share was Isaiah 2:4 that says, the Lord will mediate between nations and will settle international disputes. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will no longer fight against nation, nor train for war anymore. That's when Jesus returns, right? That's what Isaiah was talking about. That when Jesus comes back, he's going to mediate between nations and he will settle international disputes. So we also have to focus on that as well. You get me? All these countries, they can go to war and all this stuff, and it will affect us, right? We're being affected economically, right? Because of the Strait of Hormuz and whatnot. And we have to pray that we don't get affected physically, correct? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I pray we don't have to do the conscription thing that you just said, right? I pray that the draft isn't activated. That's another thing I read the other day, that Trump hasn't written off the option of enacting the draft.
That's what that is, right? The conscript. That's what that is.
There you go. So, so he hasn't written that off. So he knows that's an option, and he's very much willing to do it.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't think the war has gotten that big that we need to get a draft. We also haven't done boots on the ground yet.
Yeah.
So far, we only have, I think, recorded 6 U.S. troops.
Yeah,
deaths.
I think so. Yeah.
I believe so, which is unfortunate, and we don't want any deaths. Yeah, I mean, especially not U.S.
Not innocent
troops.
death for sure.
Exactly. But anyways, all that to say that Jesus is the one that's going to handle all of this in the end.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, as a believer, we know that ultimately, newsflash, I once heard, there's only 2 things that are for sure in life: death and taxes.
Right.
And so taxes, you can't avoid them. You got to pay the IRS. Jesus said,
well,
you could try to do tax evasion, but the Lord have mercy on your soul.
Right.
Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to the Lord what is the Lord's.
Right.
But death, it's going to come for us all. And so we believe as Christians that death is not the end, that Jesus defeated death, that he came back from the grave. And so because he lives, we may too now live. And so we know that death is not the end for us. So we got to have our faith and hope in Jesus, knowing that death is not the end. Whenever it comes, whether it's by way of World War III or natural causes, death is not the end for the believer. And something that I wanted to point out again for you, from what you said, the whole end times thing, the wars, people always bring that up, the wars and rumors, the famines, the earthquakes. But like you said, these are the beginning of the birth pains. Here are 2 signs that I think will signify that we're closer to the end times. One of them is persecution. It says that then you will be handed over to be persecuted and be put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. That's Matthew 24:9. I think a great persecution, a worldwide global persecution, is going to come for Christians.
Philip Anthony Mitchell has preached on that. He said that at some point it will be that Christianity is made illegal.
Absolutely. So I think that's correct. I think that's going to be one of the biggest signs. Okay, we're really near this thing.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I've said this before, it says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So I think 2 very major signs are to come, where everybody knows of Jesus, and I think that's where AI and social media is helping usher the return of Jesus, because now more than ever you can preach the gospel. I could be talking about Jesus here in the U.S. and be reaching somebody from Indonesia or China or whatever,
or Iran.
right? Or Iran. Yeah, absolutely. But then the persecution globally, I think that's also going to be a big indication of end times. So I do think, even though it seems like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen with the world, I do think there's still a little bit of time. Yeah. And because there is time, I think there needs to be an urgency on believers to lead other people to Christ.
Right.
And so I just want to end on that note, that if anything, I hope this has spurred a new fervor in you for making disciples of all nations, for preaching the gospel, for being unashamed of your faith, and to let the Holy Spirit lead you to evangelize and minister to people. Share the good news of Jesus, which is that he loves you, he died for you, and he wants you to enjoy eternity with him, not separated from him.
Yeah. I think we can start
That's
wrap up. I thought this was good conversation. I would encourage everyone, do your own research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just go off of what we just told you. You got me? Like, we did a lot of research for this. We watched a 2-hour podcast to get ready for this, and we used a lot of articles and whatnot, and social media, whatever. So don't go based off of what we're saying. We hope that everything that we shared was as accurate as possible. Like I said, we did our research, but some things, again, like you said in the beginning, this is an evolving situation. So we could be wrong about certain things, and for that, forgive us ahead of time. But do your own research. Do your own research. Pray. Read your word. Bring people to Jesus. Just because the world looks like it's ending, it doesn't mean that it is. Jesus makes that super clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, but we can wrap up. Awesome. Alrighty, guys. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Until next time.
Peace.